subnets in details. How do I know the subnets? How do I know first, last address? How do I know the broadcasts? Number of hosts, increment, all those details. I'll describe the other part of the story of something related to the ARP. How do I have entries to ARP related to subnets to explain exactly how do they associate together. And finally, again, going back to subnets, I want to separate inverts ranges in specific addresses. So looking first of all, first questions. There are like 5 examples here. I'm going to do one of those, and you do the other one. So which one do you want me to do? 11, 18, 20, 27. I'm doing, you want me to do 18? Okay, let's do 18. First of all, what's that 18 for? Why do I need CIDR?
What kind of network you want?
Sorry?
So what kind of network you want?
Why do I need it?
So you know how many...
Yeah, that's an indication of how many subnets that I'll create, but why do I need it? Why do I need to create subnets? Why is it not just use the default ones?
We haven't got enough IPs.
Sorry?
We haven't got enough IPs.
So IP version 4 at the moment is getting to an exhaustion. There's no IP addresses available to be used by new users. So we need to have a new way of dividing those IP addresses into new subnets and new hosts. So creating network portion and a host portion to give the new addresses to other users. So that's why I need the CIDR. I'm starting the first one. I'm answering every part of that question, okay? So 10.0.0.0.18. How many bits there is in your IP address? There is 32 bits. Each one of those is 4 bytes with 32 bits. Each byte is in 8 bits. This 18 is reflecting your CIDR, i.e. your your mask subnet. So this will indicate how many subnets and network hosts do I have. So this 18 is reflecting the number of ones in your subnet. So we said you have 32 bits. This is 18. So at the moment that means 8 in your first byte. Another 8, that gives 16 in the second byte. Third byte, that means us with 1, 2. That's the 18 ones that we have. What do you have? The other parts, what is it? Now we have zeros. How many zeros for the first byte? I the third one at the moment. 6 to complete this 8. 4, 2. That's your 6. Final byte, that's purely zeros, not purely hosts. If I would say, what is this portion? Is it a network or a host portion?
Network.
Basically, every one reflects a network, and zeros reflect your hosts. Network again. When you have a combination of both, therefore that's your interesting one. And finally, you have the hosts as the zeros. Okay. Let's answer the questions first. The address class A, B, or C. Which class is this one? And why? I'm looking at this IP address. Which class is this? And why?
Class B.
Class B. Why? What do you think?
Is it because the...
First of all, is it class B?
Sorry?
Is it class B? No.
C?
Why?
Because the ones go up onto the third.
No. Which class is it? It's not C yet. It's class A. Why?
Because class A is from 10 to...
It's not from 10. There's a range of numbers. So the question is, the classes is indicated by the first byte. Just see the range of this first byte, that's your class indicator. So class A is your range from 1 to 1 to 6. That's in decimal, by the way. So if you see the number ranges between 1 to 126, that's class A. First byte only. If it's a class B, that's from 1 to 8 to 191. Somewhere. You Google it, you find it.
sorry.
It's 191. Why did I skip 127? I'll tell you that. So it's 191. Final part, class C, is 192 to 223. The 223. Yeah. So if the range of that byte falls within any of those classes, you know exactly which class it is. Why there is no 127, that's purely reserved for loopback and other addresses related to the machine itself and the server. So don't worry about 127. But that's your ranges. So again, this falls into that range of numbers, so therefore it's a class A. Okay? Second question. The subnet mask in binary and decimal. So we've already done the actual binary part. I want to see the decimal. How do I see that? How do I get the decimal part? Anyone? How do you know the decimal out of the binary? What do you do?
I don't know.
Yeah, so what you refer to what?
2 to the power of 2.
Yeah, so there is a table that we created that each byte has values of bits. So those 8 bits, 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, has a values of decimal that will be 2 to the power of 0, 1, 2, until 7. That's 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128. Okay. How do I know the decimal part? Just accumulate the number of ones inside that table. So how many ones do I have in my interesting byte? So let's do the first part. How many ones do I have? That 8 ones.
8.
In other words, I'm accumulating all those values together. That will give you 2, 5, 5. Okay? Second portion, again, same, 2, 5, 5. This one, I only have 2 ones. That's 1 to 8 plus 64. How much is that? Final part is 0. That's a subnet mask in decimal. I'm using that table to create that number. Okay? Any questions? Should be straightforward. I'm not doing anything. I'm just adding the numbers, creating that change of decimal. So, third part, the interesting byte. We said the interesting byte is usually combining of 2, the network portion and your host portion. Therefore, that's your interesting byte. Third byte in your IP address. Now give me the increment. What's the increment? What's the formula to understand the increment? The formula says you need to have 256 subtracted from the number of ones inside your interesting byte, the values of them in decimal. So in other words, the decimal value, and that's 192. What's your increment then? 128. What's the value? 64? Are you sure?
Yeah.
So that's your what? That's what? That's your increment. Any questions? Because when you go to a subnet, you need to increment by that value to get to the new subnet. That's why it's called increment. And sometimes the name doesn't make any sense. Why it's called interesting bytes? I don't know. Don't ask me that question. So I think it chose the increment one. Easy to find. But it's just a name being given by someone who designed this.
Helps to explain. Remember the name.
Yeah, but the increment is mainly just go from one place to another. You need to do that increment in a sense. Part E, number of subnets. So the equation says to know the number of subnets, you do 2. So your subnets are 2 to the power of n, and n is number of ones inside your interesting byte. So that's 2 to the power of 2, and that's 4 subnets. Okay? Finally, number of hosts. Formula says 2 to the power of x minus 2. X here is number of zeros. And that's it, just zeros. Not an interesting part. So that's 8 plus 6. That's 14. Okay? So that's 2 to the power of 14 minus 2. I don't care about the number, I just want to see the range so people will understand it. Okay? So don't, if you have a calculator, then just do it. If not, just put a question mark. Why minus 2?
Usually one for the broadcast.
Exactly.
One more for.
So 2 are reserved,
Yeah.
one for the broadcast, the other one for the subnet itself. Each subnet needs to have an address. So you need to reserve that one. You cannot give the address subnet, the subnet address to a user. So you need to give it to that subnet, to that network itself. So these are the 2 addresses being reserved. So now we've understood number of hosts in each subnet, number of subnets in the mask bytes, increment, interesting bytes, subnet mask in binary and decimal, and the class of the address. Before I go to the table of creating subnet, first, last, and the broadcast address, any questions? No questions? Okay, I'm going to do the table of full details. Shall I delete this? Okay. How many subnets do I have? We said 4. 2 to the power of 2, that's 4 subnets. So what are your subnet addresses? So first of all, what do I start with? That's 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 0. That's your first subnet. What's your second subnet? Where do you do the increment? So where do you do the increment? Which byte will have the increment? Because it's the interesting byte. So you do the increment inside the interesting byte. So the second one should be 10, 0, 64, because that's your increment, 0. Third one, that's 10, 0, 64 plus 64. Okay? So, what's your first address in your first subnet? I want to know the first address.
10.0.01.
Exactly. Why is it not 1 here?
Because that's the second one.
So if I put 1 here, what did that do?
Change it.
That's fine, I can't change it eventually because the last address will be 10, 0, 63, 254. Meanwhile, the broadcast will be 10, 0, 63, 255. Question is, why did I not put 1 here? So why is it not 1, 0?
Because it
Yeah?
Just another host.
So what if I make it this one?
That's
What
the
first-
address.
So it's not the first address. You skipped a full range of a subnets. Therefore, you skipped 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 until 255. When you reach 255 in the last byte, and it goes to 256, it cannot go to 256. It goes 1 back to 0. So you pass all those addresses if you skipped it. So the first address is not actually 1, 0. It's 0, 1. That's your first address. Okay? First address, last address. So that's your subnet. First, last, broadcast. Any questions? Yeah.
Why have you got then 10.0.128?
64 plus 64, what is that?
Yeah, but why do you have to like do 64 plus 64?
Because you have increments.
You already increment.
What's your increment?
64, so.
Okay, so if I would go from first subnet to the second subnet, what do? I increment my first subnet by 64.
Yeah.
From that 64. Why is it the third byte? Because that was your interesting byte.
Why do you increment it again?
Because you want to go to the third subnet. How many subnets do you have? You have 4 subnets. No, stop at the third. You need to go to the fourth one as well. Okay? So you need to write the 4 subnets. You need to give them their addresses. So when you say these are my networks, now you're giving me the first host, last host, and then the broadcast. That's a part of the question. So you need the increment to go from a subnet to the other. Would you like to ask a question? That's the increment. You use the increment to get from one subnet to the other. You need to describe the 4 subnets. I've made 3 because there's no space. I'll create the 4th afterwards. Well, you need to mention 4. If it's 16, for example, because in some examples you have 16, I'm not anticipating to do the 16. I'll say, just give me the first 3 and the last one, for example. Okay? Before I continue, any questions? I need someone to give me the first address and the second subnet. Not you. I've already told you. So someone else.
10.0.64.1.
Yeah. Last.
10.0.
Look at that one. That'll be easy.
127.
Exactly. 2.5. Broadcast will be. Any questions? Okay, so now I'll ask you to do one of those. Let's choose this one, 20. No, let's choose 11, because that's a different byte. Let's choose 11. Let's do that one. Yeah.
Why not using the subnet in the first IP?
Sorry?
Why not using the subnet in first IP? So it's 10.0. The first address.
Yeah.
10.0.0 instead of 63.
I don't understand the question.
No, instead of 0.
If I was 63, what happens to 0?
It's in the subnet.
No, that's the first address inside that subnet.
Inside, oh yeah.
No, that's your subnet.
Oh,
These
yeah.
are your subnets.
Yeah, yeah.
These are your first addresses inside the subnet.
I see.
So what I want you to do is 10.0.0.0.11 and ask you all the questions. I'll give you 5 minutes and I'll do the rest. I'll do this afterwards. each subnet will
One
be
other
each
subnet.
Okay, I'm going to do it now. So let's try to match it up together. So it's the class is A. Very clear because the range is 10 between 1 and 126. So the class is A. Second part, the subnet mask in binary. That's the subnet in mask in binary. It's very clear. I'm just doing the number of ones inside my subnet, the mask itself. So that's 11 ones. So that's 8, 9, 10, 11. Left with 5 zeros inside that byte because there are 8 bits inside it. 8 for the third one, 8 zeros. I'm not sure if that's 8, but that's 8 for the last one as well. Okay? So that ends up with network, interesting byte, hosts, and hosts as well. Okay? So the interesting byte is this one. What's the value of this in decimal? 255 224 0 0. How did I find this 224? We said that the value of those bits in bytes are 128 plus 64 plus 32. That should end up to 224. Okay? 0 0 because they are zeros. Simple as that. What's your interesting byte? The interesting byte is the byte that has both network portion and the host portion. So you have host and network, and that's your interesting byte at the moment. What's your increments? Formula says 2, 5, 6 minus this 224 gives you what?
32.
That's your increment. Okay? There's another way of doing it, but you can say 2 to the power of zeros inside that interesting byte. That will give you 32 as well. So that was much easier if you want to do it that way. So 2 to the power of zeros inside that interesting byte will give you the increment. So let's do a test. If I say it should be 128 plus 64 plus 32 plus 16. In other words, that will be how much? 224 plus 16, that's 240. So 240, that will be 16. 2 to the power of 1, 2, 3, 4, that's 16 as well. So it works both ways, okay? Now I want to know the subnets. How many subnets do you have? That's 2 to the power of 3, and that's 8. You have 8 subnets. That's 2 to the power of 1s inside my interesting byte. That's 2 to the power of 3, that's 8. Hosts, that will be 2 to the power of zeros. I think that's 8 plus 8, 16, plus 5, that's 21, minus 2. Again, I don't care how's the value. I don't want to know exactly the number of hosts that you have exactly, but I want you to know that there are a big range of addresses there. Okay? Now I want to see the table. So I'm going to do the table, and you try to match it with your table, okay? So subnets, first, last, and broadcast. What's your first subnet? Second subnet, you increment by how much?
32.
32. Where is that? Which byte?
Second.
Because it's the interesting byte. So you increment in the interest byte to decide your subnets. Third subnet. Let's do 3 subnets. And I'll do the last one as well. So I'll do 10, 2 to 4, and 0, 0. What's the first host in your first subnet?
10.0.0.1.
Exactly. Last
10.31.0.254.
0. You said 10.31.0
Yeah.
point.
254.
Okay, so let's look at this. Is that a host or a network? Third one. So why is this even? Where are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 20, 255? Did you just kill them all or what? Or you skipped them? I want to know the reason. So if you say 0, 2, 5, 4, that means you have, these are your subnets.
Yeah.
10, 0, you said 0, 1, 1 to 2, 2, 5, 5. Is that right? That's the first range of addresses. Then you skipped, then you've done what? You've done 10, 1, 0, 200, 1 to 255. What about this one? How do you not host? To whom are you keeping it? Are you the big companies trying to buy those addresses but not give it to anyone? So this should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as well, and you start distributing those addresses as well. So this should be 255.
Oh.
So you go to up to 255 as well. Don't skip those. So your last address should be 255. 254. So you've done 0. So what do? You 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 255.
Yeah.
So when that reaches 255, you cannot go 256. You increment it, goes back 1, 0, 1, 2, 3. So you're skipping all of those. And finally, you broadcast 10, 31, 255, 255. Okay? Questions? Exactly what happened. What was the mistake? He skipped 4 range of addresses in the second one. If that was a network, then that's fine. If it's an interesting byte, you increment it. If it's a host, it deals the same as this one. Let's do the second one. That's 10, 32, 0, 1. Last one, 10, 63, 255, 254. Last one, 10, 63, 255, 255. Let's do the last one. Not sure how we're going to get there, but so the first address and the last. So is this too far? Is that right? I haven't made the last.
No.
What is it?
Yeah, it is.
What is it?
224.
Fair enough. So what if you want to do the last one? Just multiply how many subnets we said? 16. You said 8. So 8 multiplied by how many to get to the last one?
How would you do?
Okay, last one. 10, 224, 0, 1. By the way, if I would get to the end, that means I'm incrementing 32 until I reach the last one, until I reach the 8th. Okay? 10, 224, 0, 1. Last one. 10, 224, 255, 254. Broadcast 10, 224, 255, 255. That's the last address. Any questions? Okay. So I'm not going to do the rest of the first one because it will be the same to this one. I'm just changing the subnet mask. I'm going to do the rest of the questions, and then I'll ask you. I need your help with the second one. So I need you to understand the part of it as well. That's very obvious at the moment. Explain why host needs both MAC address and IP addresses to get to the right destination. By now we should all know that. IP addresses help you reach the right subnet. Meanwhile, the MAC addresses help you reach the right host inside that subnet. Surprise that. Okay? You need the IP address to get to the right network, to the right subnet, but you need the MAC address to know exactly which host inside that subnet you want to connect. That's it. Questions? Let's look at that one. Okay, I need to focus here. Machine X with that IP address is masked by 24. Okay, has recently communicated with machine A with that address, machine B, machine C. The ARP cache of machine X contains two entries only, and that's 146.227.114.20, i.e. machine A, and 146.227.114.250. There is nothing indicating what's that. Explain why there is an entry for machine A but no entry for B and C, and suggest why there is an entry for 146.227.114.250. Let's start with the first portion of the question. Why there is only entry for machine A, no B and C? And although the question is saying he has communicated with three of them. Why? Look at the addresses. Look at the subnets, the mask of them, and see. You want to say something? The router will be the second part of the question. I'm not worried about that. Give me the first one. Even if you connect to the router, why is it there's an only entry for A and no B and C?
Machine A is on the same network.
Machine A is on the same network. Is it the same network? By the same network, it means the same subnet. Why? Just tell me. Give me the analysis behind it. So machine A, give me machine X address. 24. So when I say 24, so that's exactly a class, you're ending with a class C now. Regardless of the range, you're telling him that this is your network, and that's your host. Is that right? Because it's 24. So until that, this is all network portion, and that's the only cost. So based on your analogy, saying A is on the same subnet. Give me address, A address.
146.227.144.20.
B and C.
146.
Just give me this portion where it changes.
112.10 and 7.6.
What can you see from those B and C? They reside on different subnets because the portion of the network changes. So in other words, if I want to draw this, it might look like that. Machine A connected with X here. Meanwhile, here you'll have B and C because they belong to a different subnet. And if they are belong to a different subnet, ARP table only stores devices. You remember that whole ARP range? You only store devices in the same subnet. If I would do ARP table for this machine, it will only show you devices connected in that subnet and only that subnet. So that's why you have those two entries. Because A and X reside in the same subnet, B and C reside on a different subnet. What is my evidence? That range of the network host is changing. This is how we do it. Okay? Questions? Is that clear? Everyone? The second part where you said that, okay, what's that entry? That should be either a switch or a router. So this needs an address, so that's your actual router. So the address is, where is it? 146.227.114.250 means that's this interface of the router because it's residing on the same subnet. Is that right? See the address? They are the same. The only changes is the actual final part of the host and the map, of course. If you compare those, they reside in the same subnet. The only changes is the host. So that means the router of the first interface. That's where it is. Any questions? Was that clear? Questions? Okay. Final part of the tutorial is very, again, similar to the first part. I'm asking you to give me, calculate the number of separate network included in the IP addresses. When I say separate networks for the range 600 to 255, that means I only need the subnets. Okay? So if I want to ask you, give me the number of separate networks included, I just want the subnets. Okay? So what are the subnets? How do you find the subnets between that range? You need to do the same formula. So if I do the 14 one, let's do the second one, 66.000.14. I'll do the same thing. I'll write the address, I'll put 14 ones, and I'll understand my subnet, my increment, and then I'll start with my exact subnets. And I'll do the increment between each one of those. I don't need to see the first or the last of the broadcast. I just want to see the subnets. So it's easier than putting the full details. That's the only difference. Plus it's the same analogy. No changes. Do you want me to do that? Or is it just, I'm repeating myself. If you want me to do it, I'll still have to change it. Want to do it? Okay. Fair enough. I'm giving you the range, so that means the full cover of the range. If I were to reduce the range, you just stop with that range. So if I would say 6000, and I'll say 255, and here I'll say 224, 255, then you need to stop before the end of the subnet, the last one. So you just follow the ranges, okay? So I'm giving you 66, 0, 0, 0 with 14. How many ones? That's 8 in the first byte, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, is it? 15, 16. Zeros, zeros. How many subnets do I have?
18.
How many subnets?
2 to the power of 18 minus 2.
No.
Oh,
To the power of ones inside your interesting byte.
2 to the power of 6 minus 2.
No. That's your hosts. To the power of power of zeros in the full range minus 2. Subnets is just 2 to the power of ones inside the interesting byte without any minus. 64. So that's 64. So I have 64 subnets. So if I ask you to give me a range of those 64, that would be pretty good. But again, so I just want to know the subnets. What do you need else to know the subnets? I need to know my increment. Even I don't need to know my hosts. I just need to know my increments. And that's 2 to the power of zeros. If you want to do it, 256 plus, minus 128, 64, 32, 16, 8, 4. That will give you how much? So what's the increment? So that means the subnets are, give me just 2 subnets, 3 subnets. That's 66, what? 0, 0, 0. Second subnet, someone.
66.4.
Yes. Third one. And so on. You increment this by 4. That's it. That's your subnets. Imagine if you give 64, you're sitting there. +4, +4. I'm just kidding, just give you 3 or 4 of those. Okay. Imagine I give you like those 64, I give me the full addresses. You'll spend 3 hours just doing that question with 3 different books to do it. That'll be nice. Everyone's sitting there for like 3 hours just doing that question. Last year I've just asked them to do, last year was the question basically, last year was basically just give me that range. That's it. Give me subnet, first, last, and broadcast. But to do those ranges, you need to know the full details. I don't want to see them, but you need to know them to do it. So you need to know the subnets, you need to know the increments, you don't need to know the host, but you need to know how big is the range. And then you need to know the increment. And then you say my subnets, first, last, and the broadcast, and you give me the details. That's it. That was 10 marks last year. Because it was 3, 2, 2, 3. I've divided them into 4 parts. Any questions? Okay. Finished for today. Coursework specification is on your blackboard under a tab called Coursework Specification. Next lecture I'll explain full details. What are the options, how you do it, and so on and so forth. If you haven't signed the register, please sign this.
Can you explain the number 2, please?
I'll explain number 2.
Number 2.
Question number 2.
Number 2, yeah.